Well, hello and welcome. It's Wednesday, the 21st of October. It's nearly Halloween. We're not quite at our Halloween show, but I want to welcome you to The Shortlist. I'm Johnny Campbell, the host of The Shortlist and also CEO and co-founder of Social Talent. And today we're going to talk about a topic dear to my heart, advanced sourcing techniques. Literally, Social Talent was founded off the back of advanced sourcing techniques. And our guest joining us today is somebody who recently joined the Social Talent platform, who I think is going to take us into the future for the next generation of advanced sourcing techniques. And as someone I've got to know over the last 5-6 years, is a fantastic expert in this area, has just tons of knowledge. And I'll explain why he has that knowledge and why it's so important. I'm going to share lots of that with us today. But I need your input. I'm going to ask you, as our audience listening in live, for those of you who are listening in live, to please give us your questions. Our guest is going to take your questions and give you insights and answers and share with you his knowledge and best practice. And we'll take them live on LinkedIn and YouTube and put them to our guest as we go through the show. Quick reminder for those of you perhaps are new to the show, or if you only have a few minutes and want to come back to this, you can find out our entire back catalog is listed at socialtalent.com/the shortlist. And you can also sign up and subscribe for our podcast. If you're not listening to this in podcast format, why not? You can listen to us on Apple, on Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. So search for The Shortlist, any of our show titles or our guest names, and you'll find our back catalog there as well. You'll also find our future catalog and what's coming up next, and you can register for alerts on that on our website. But back to the show. So José Kadlec is somebody I first met at a conference, maybe 5-6 years ago in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And at the time he came up to me and he'd written a book on sourcing, introduced himself to me, and gave me a bit of background on his what I thought was very unique background. He has since then really built on his reputation to become literally one of Europe's premier sourcers, somebody that a lot of people look to for his expertise, not just because he's extremely smart. He's an ex-computer engineer who became a sourcer, which really excites me just knowing that background, but because he lives and breathes this every day. He runs with his business partner in Milan an RPO company in the Czech Republic called GoodCall. He also runs a recruitment training business called Recruitment Academy, and he has a software business that builds recruiting software for the industry. Literally, this man has an enormous amount of energy and actually literally just came through COVID and didn't even know he had it because he was so goddamn busy being on podcasts, running shows, teaching people, running a business. Jose, I want to welcome you to the show. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I've been waiting to talk to someone like yourself, someone who really understands this industry and probably even better than me. And I don't say that lightly, but really lives and breathes it more than I do today, lives and breathes the advanced sourcing techniques. Jose, welcome to the show. Maybe if you want to add some more color to our guests and literally maybe in your own words, just describe your own background and what makes you who you are today.
Hello, Johnny. Yeah, I just, as you mentioned that, I remembered like the sourcing summit in Netherlands. I remember that I was actually back then thinking like how to enter the global stage of sourcing, because imagine you are there active, doing videos and content about sourcing. LinkedIn, it was kind of like covered, it was standard. And if I remember correctly, I entered that with some kind of like hacking things, totally. I utilized my computer background and took this as my advantage. And I think that's what I do since today. We are changing the industry by the application of technology and analytical approach. So, yeah.
And I've always been amazed. You've bowled me over with some of the cool techniques you've demonstrated on stage, which I think really just push people to think differently about sourcing and think differently about data collection, information, how you use that. But critically, you're not just somebody who gets up and speaks. You literally have employees who need to do this on behalf of massive big multinationals every day to fill real jobs. And therefore, I think that gives you a unique position to not only come up with the ideas, but really battle test them to see if they work.
Yeah.
So we're excited to hear what you have to offer. I know we've got guests, Catherine's online. Hey, Catherine's on YouTube watching this as well. We've got tons of people hopefully tuned in and listening, whether they're live or listening to the podcast to hear your techniques. But before we get to your fantastic advice and your advanced sourcing techniques, Jose, it's that time of day. It's time for the news. So the first article that we wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, Jose, is this piece from Forbes. And It promises to be, hopefully, a great article, The Great Rehiring, 4 tips for finding great talent after the pandemic. What did you think of these tips?
To be honest, like it's Forbes, yeah. So I think the tips might be a little bit vague or general. Like for example, one of the tips, like use LinkedIn and reach the passive talent. Yeah, that's what we do every day, but it's not that simple. But of course, definitely there might be companies not using LinkedIn at all, maybe since today. So for them, it might be definitely a step up. But I think we should be talking like what's new on the market with sourcing. What's maybe companies are now not struggling with the volume of candidates. The volume might be there. You put their advertisement, but maybe you are still missing the quality. Yeah? Because imagine if companies were laying off some people, maybe 10% of their headcount. Of course, you don't fire your best people. Yeah, in the first way. So suddenly there are more active people on the market. The volume of candidates is higher, but you are not getting to your candidates which you would normally hire. So you need to use active sourcing again. The problem is with candidates, because candidates are definitely difficult to move at the current moment because they are uncertain. Yeah, they don't have the certainty that they will not be fired within the probation period, for example. So they don't want to move. So your skills as a sourcer to persuade a candidate, not only to find him, but to persuade him to actually get to the interview and maybe eventually get to the company, is definitely more demanding. Plus, of course, we are now living more in kind of like online way, so all the interviews online and so on. But we can say that a lot of companies already changed like the mindset that they are able to hire people actually without seeing them face to face. But there are still companies which require to see the candidate face to face before that, which of course for us it's a problem, because imagine I'm sitting now in Prague here. By tomorrow we have a strict lockdown, and it will be like difficult, actually literally difficult to move the people. On the other hand, we see, because GoodCall started as a sourcing business since day one. We started as, let's say, one recruiter plus Milan. He was a recruiter back then as well. And something like 5-6 sourcers. Yeah, so actually more sourcers than recruiters. That was our initial setup. But what you can see right now, that there is this trend of RPO, of renting sourcers, renting recruiters on site, off site, or for example, creating log list, short list. Yeah, so suddenly we call it like flexible recruitment, and companies, because they are uncertain as well, not candidates only, but companies as well, they rather hire, for example, a recruiter for 3 days a week to cover the whole recruitment, from, for example, some basic roles up to the managerial roles or some more complex roles. And they have the certainty that they can, for example, release this contract the next month when, for example, there is a lockdown or the business goes down. So I think RPO definitely in today's and we can see that from our numbers, it's definitely there. When we speak about active candidates, definitely more candidates on the market. So I think there is a chance for sourcers to approach candidates more with like inbound sourcing techniques. We can start with some like posts, writing articles, anything what's inbound related. But what we can see, we, for example, work for Microsoft, where Microsoft, they want to hire a lot of salespeople. Yeah, and they had in Australia this model of business that hiring, for example, 100 people of this sort who would be selling ERP systems and so on. In the Czech Republic, it's like heavy number. You are not able just to sit to LinkedIn, Facebook, anywhere else, and to hire them with the active methods. Yeah? So what we are doing, that we started Microsoft Academy, and we are kind of luring, and we are paying traffic. Actually, Microsoft is paying the traffic to get the people on this platform, and from that platform, we are hiring those people. Yeah? And suddenly, we already have already a few people already hired, and it's working in this way. But what's the problem for you or for the company doing this? That suddenly you are going from recruitment or sourcing, and you are in e-commerce business. You are selling some academy. Yeah, you are in a social talent business, but for the purpose of recruitment. So these new skills, not only for individual sourcers, but for the overall business, might be there. I was just consulting with Tieto company. They are doing a lot of business in like Finland and so on, like banking and so on. And they need to hire a lot of Java engineers. But the problem is that they have a branch in some smaller city here in the Czech Republic. So they started Java Bootcamp. And that's the same story, because they need to influence the new graduates to actually start with Java, so they have any possible chance to hire them later on as their employees. Yeah. So, but suddenly it's
I'm going to pause you because there's just a huge amount to unpack, right? Like you've just thrown like hours worth of advice there in about 6 minutes, right? I want to just try to unpack it for a second and take your last point and bring us on to our second news article in just a second. But I think your first point is excellent. Analogy is, we always talk about needle in a haystack in sourcing. And whether you agree with that analogy or not, I think, to your first point, there's the same amount of needles as in very few, and there are just more haystacks. And that's the market we live in, that because there's so many more applicants, active candidates, the needles are harder to find because they're hidden under more haystacks. And now the needles don't want to leave the haystack. They're more afraid to leave the haystack. And that presents brand new challenges for sourcers. I did love your point on how you're approaching in that kind of volume environment. Then you're approaching sourcing not from a traditional, let's just keep hunting for needles. You found a magnet, and I love that. You kind of get the haystacks got bigger, same amount of needles. Let's just get a powerful magnet, and that brings us on to our second story. Right, I want to maybe just get it shared on screen there from Niall. But this is another story from Entrepreneur Europe. Struggling to hire top talent, change the way you recruit. This company, I think, described doing something that's not dissimilar to what you did. They've gone to a different market. They've decided to change where they normally look, and they've not quite done this exact same thing, but they've used education to basically upskill a group of people. So not just attract them, but to upskill them and then make them ready for the job. Talk to me about this method, and maybe expand a little bit more on the big magnet method that you're using for sourcing. So what do you think, first of all, of this article and this method that was being discussed by Infosys and how they're finding talent? And then maybe take that back to the example you just gave me.
I think that the bottom line of this article was actually about like reskilling, upskilling of those people. There are a lot of, I think one company, they got funded that they are preparing like reskilling sabbaticals for their employees. So instead of firing them, we can put them to this sabbatical, they reskill. But I think, yes, like the idea is perfect, but I think sometimes in practice, the reskilling doesn't work because you are not able to reskill just somebody to be a programmer, and so on. So sometimes the reskilling of the talent might be quite difficult. And we are, I was just talking with a friend of mine. They are doing a lot of these AI things, and they are really changing the market where they suddenly fire 40 quality engineers from the factory. And now it's a question like what to do with those people. They will probably not become AI engineers, which would be the skill actually this company would be needing at the moment. So I think definitely Infosys did a great job on utilizing, as they mentioned, a cheaper talent, 25% cheaper, and it was also about that the skills are getting obsolete. That's definitely true. You are studying 4 years somewhere, and then your education might be obsolete. Even if I think that like the basic fundamentals and principles will actually never die. If you study, for example, math or algorithms or programming, then of course maybe it's a question that if you are an older programmer, you programmed in COBOL, now you are programming in Python, but like the principle is the same, and you can use the mathematics somewhere else. When you are AI engineer, suddenly there is a demand for this AI workforce. You can actually still, as AI engineer, you need to be skilled in, for example, programming, because that's like underneath. So that's definitely true, and people can move faster in the learning curve. And we can actually see that with talent sources as well. Imagine like what's the skill set of today's talent sourcer? They need to search for candidates, so they need to be skilled in searching. They need to gather the information about the candidate. So it's kind of searching as well. Then they need to do approaching. So they need to find how to approach the candidates, how to find an email, telephone number, how to put the message across. They need to be skilled with like being on the phone with the candidates, like what to put into the message, how to call with the candidates. They need to be skilled with headhunting. Maybe they need to be skilled with automation, inbound sourcing, many skills, and you want all those skills from the one person. That's why we are thinking, for example, and we were already started, that we are breaking down the talent sourcer into smaller like chunks where, for example, there will be sourcers doing just searching, because that's more like, I would say that's more like IT knowledge, yeah, Boolean search and this kind of logic. Where, for example, approaching candidates, being good on the phone, it can be older person where we are touching on the diversity, where you can, for example, hire a 50+ year old like lady or man. And of course, this person will probably not be good with LinkedIn, but this person may be good on the phone doing these things. So you can be more, if I want to use the word like agile, that's probably agile sourcing might be the term, but it's really, really, really difficult to find a talent sourcer who's great with all of these aspects. It's almost impossible.
Because it's crazy, because it used to be a case people say it's hard to find a recruiter who's kind of really good at all the aspects. So we broke out sourcing from other parts of recruiting. But now you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, we're breaking out sourcing into its distinctive functions and tasks, dividing up the labor and looking at who's best. And again, different opportunities. Maybe the 50+ person is brilliant at sourcing, but maybe the young person is brilliant at engagement. Of course, it could go either way. But I love the idea that you're kind of going, find a person who's really good at a part of it. And if you have volume, which to your point about RPO and large recruiting teams, you have volume, it justifies you having specialists at each part of the funnel. Yeah. Have you seen, operational throughput increase? Have you seen the productivity gains of that already?
We are testing that, definitely. We are testing that. Just we started with one team it was actually not IT, but a commercial division. But imagine this, for example, with the automation, you realize sooner or later that not all of your sourcers will be actually on the same level. Yeah? So you have the best sourcer. The best sourcer knows, for example, a different type of automation tools. He can work with that and so on. But other sourcers, it will be, I would say, like overhead for them actually even to teach it, to educate them in this skill. So you have no other chance that this person good with automation will be doing just the automation and helping others. So one person is creating long lists, and other person is taking the long list and doing, for example, the approaching. Another person is taking the short list from that, for example, and doing some more thorough screening. It might be like that. So definitely I can say that we are pretty good with the benchmarks since we started, because over that 6 years, we already hired many sourcers, and even the growth was quite rapid, which I believe that's also the main reason of the business model. There are not so many companies here in Central and Eastern Europe who would be working in this business model. Sourcers, like many sourcers, and less recruiters. Usually there are companies having recruiters and few sourcers. This is not a sourcing model for me.
And tell me, if I'm a sourcer listening to you today, Jose, talk to me about strategy. What are the basics around what I need to have organized when I'm thinking about my sourcing strategy? What is your advice to a sourcer, experienced sourcer, or someone starting out around strategy?
Sure. I think like I usually, and we here at GoodCall, we usually stick to, I would say, 3-step strategy. The first point is to maximize long lists. Even if you will not utilize the whole long list, you should be able as a sourcer to know how many people, if I'm hiring, I don't know, lawyers, for example, I should be able to know how many lawyers are there, and I should be able to actually get to all of those lawyers, because maybe it will be a difficult client, maybe difficult hiring manager, difficult role, difficult position. So maybe the response from the candidates will not be ideal as you would expect. And you never know how many people you will need to get approach to get that one higher. We, for example, know here that we need to approach about 70 people to get that one higher. Of course, this is a mixture of IT and non-IT, or let's say like also like engineering, automotive, and so on. It's everything all together: finance, marketing, tech, and so on. It's 70. Of course, when you are a company hiring just in software development, you will most likely be having over 100 approach candidates per that one hire. I know companies here, for example, who are having this 300 approach candidates to get that one hire. Obviously, that's IT company. Yeah. So it's, as you can see, it's quite a lot of work. So you need to have that long list on a maximum, which is, I would say, almost like a mindset, working with what we can call exhaustive sourcing or exhaustive searching.
And are you saying like you would get to 70 or 100 before you contact a single person? Or what do you mean by focusing on the long list?
When I'm creating the long list, I create the long list and I put there, for example, 600 people. Even if I know that when I approach, for example, first 100, then I will get that higher. But I should be able to know, even like if I will be reporting to a manager, how many potential candidates are there on the market, which means also like what's the probability that we will actually fill the role. Or for example, the company Tieto, they mentioned they need to hire 40 Java developers. So imagine 40 times maybe 150. Are there enough people, even like theoretically on the market, which you can eventually approach to get those hires? Yeah. So maybe then you will approach 70 people, you will get that one hire, but you can report to the manager, there are other 500 people we could possibly like approach if that's necessary. And of course, for this, the exhaustive searching, where you need to work, like if I speak practically, it's of course about keywords, but I would almost say that it's about doing more simplistic searches. Instead of searching for software tester, you should be rather searching for tester only. Yeah, because with software tester, you are limiting your search. As well as when you are searching for verification engineer or validation engineer, I would use just verification or validation, because the person might be verification engineer or verification specialist or verification whatever else. Location, it's quite crucial. Now there are changes in LinkedIn with the location. A lot of people, they don't use, for example, a city as their location. So if you are sourcing people in Dublin, there will be definitely many, for example, engineers or candidates in Dublin, but they don't have Dublin zip code or a city on their profile. You need to be exhaustive with location to get to those people. But the perfect thing is that you are actually increasing your competitive edge by doing this, because you are getting to people you can have actually more exclusively for you. Yeah, because if you did this extra mile and no other companies or sources, recruiters are able to do that, you will have those candidates more exclusively for you. You will be actually more exclusive for them as well, because they don't receive 5 invitations a day. Maybe they receive just 1 or none, because simply their profile is not good enough.
So you're picking the fruit from the top of the tree, not just the low-hanging fruit, essentially. A couple of questions, if you don't mind me throwing them at you. So we've a question here from Gary, who's asking, is having specialists in each part of the sourcing process a more expensive option? Back to a point you made a few minutes ago that you guys are testing. Is that more expensive? I'm guessing not, because otherwise why would you do it?
Of course, it also depends if you are agency, or if you are like in-house, how you actually like budget it. But we are just starting with this process, so we don't have it in large scale. But of course, the math behind it should be that it's actually more, even if there might be like more people, it's more efficient. Imagine that with, for example, the people doing long lists, one person can actually supply to 4 different teams. Yeah, because creating long lists, it's quite fast. in one day, that one person can supply more teams with the long list, and improving the long list on the fly, where of course approaching is more time demanding part. So of course you still need, for example, when you are hiring marketing people, still in the team, for example, there will be 2 other sources doing the screening, but the time for long listing will be, for example, just a quarter of time of some shared resource supplying for more teams. And so of course our goal as well as our goal is to be efficient. That's like budget efficient as well, of course, not only time efficient and so on.
So it's not guaranteed. You have to do it right, and you have to scale it properly. But in theory, it should be.
This is also like a question, like having, for example, having like a sourcing hub of sourcers. So imagine that you can have like a hub of 5 sourcers supplying more locations, or is it better to have like in-house? Yeah, it's also dependent type of roles, the volume of roles you are doing, and so on. It's not that simple. You need to calculate it.
We have a good question from Paul Davison. He's asking, Jose, in your opinion, is LinkedIn the main go-to in sourcing, or is this just a learned bad habit that we all have?
Like, to be honest, when I check, for example, our source of hire at our database, we can see that, of course, now it will be probably like 60%, it will be DataCruit, our internal database. But when I would go deeper, how those people landed in our database, it will be still something like, for example, 60-70% LinkedIn, and we do mid and higher positions. Yeah. So I know that there are a lot of like people saying things like, you need to go beyond LinkedIn. Probably not. Yeah. That's, I would say my advice, like, don't be romantic about how you hire employees. Maybe LinkedIn, yeah, it's too boring now. It's not that cool. Maybe you would like to hire those people on TikTok, but simply check the stats, check the numbers, and you will see maybe LinkedIn is the way to go. Yeah, because of course, when I break it down, we have our mobile app as well. Of course, there are roles where we go to Facebook and so on, but still, like, the major number is still LinkedIn. So don't be afraid to say, yes, I'm hiring mainly on LinkedIn. But hiring on LinkedIn, it's not like it's not black and white. Yeah, it's not like Boolean 0 or 1. You can do it. You can do it on average. You can do it in a good way, great way, in a bad way. Yeah, it's about other tools you combine with LinkedIn. So it's not that simple. Yeah, if some of our sourcer is telling me like I searched LinkedIn for this role, it's not black and white. You need to tell me like how exactly, what did you do? That's why we are doing a checklist at GoodCall, where you can actually audit to the back what the sourcer actually did. And if there is a new sourcer, he can learn from these checklists, and he can start from some checkpoint and improve, for example, the search queries, and not starting from the scratch.
So we mentioned automation a couple of times. A lot of people have been talking for several years, right? It gets louder every year about technology replacing sourcing or parts of the process. And you already mentioned how you broke it up. Is there any interesting tech out there that you've seen or used or you're currently using that you want to share with, or you're interested in, you can share with our audience that you think that's one to watch, or here's a practical tool that is viable, or this type of thing can work to deliver some or all of the sourcing function?
I think when we speak about automation, and automation, maybe it's already too boring now. It's AI, machine learning, right, and so on. But we can start from the basics. We can start from the things that, for example, you can use, for example, plugins like Prophet, where you can open, for example, someone's Facebook profile, and you can immediately see if the person is on LinkedIn or Twitter as well, and you have a shortcut right to the profile. Because imagine, our sourcers are doing this on everyday basis. They approach hundreds and screen hundreds of people every day. We know that, for example, a good sourcer at our company, they need to do 3 to 4 telephone screens per day to deliver those results. So they do everything in bulk. So just saving 1 minute per screening of someone's profile will actually save you a lot of time in the long run. So such like, for example, Prophet or in LinkedIn, Connectify social links. Now there are some problems with this plugin because LinkedIn changed the design and probably the plugin hasn't adjusted yet. But Connectify social links, perfect plugin when you open someone's LinkedIn profile and you can see in the bottom right corner other social media for this person. That's for me automation as well. That's production automation of some process as well. Of course, then we go. Sorry.
No, go on. Keep going, please.
Then we can go like to things like, for example, email sequencing. Yeah, we use, for example, Mixmax. You can use Lemlist, and normally you would be doing follow-ups. How it starts manually. Yeah. So you send email and you say, okay, in 4 days I should follow up this candidate. So I will put a note into my calendar, but suddenly you have 100 notes in your calendar that you should do these follow-ups. So you can use, for example, some semi-automatic way. And actually I'm describing this in the course automation at the social talent platform as well. And you can put there, for example, into followupden.com like a semi-manual note, and you will be notified after 4 days. Or you can use Mixmax or Lemlist, where you do the full sequencing, that you schedule 3 different emails. You can put there gaps between those emails, and when the candidate actually replied to your message, the candidate will be cut out of this loop, and other messages will not be sent to him as well. Yeah. So then, of course, now quite popular LinkedIn automation. Yeah? Things like Phantom Buster, things like LinkedIn Helper. LinkedIn Helper currently has the new version, number 2, which is the desktop version, and you can create workflows. So you can create actually sequencing. You can send invitation. When the invitation is accepted, you can send other message. Then you can do something else, and it's kind of like, let's say, it's kind of a neat software. Everything is nicely done, and you can create a different kind of campaigns within one account, for example. Yeah. Of course, people with automation, they usually think like, for example, CV parsing. Yeah. But we tried this several times, and for example, for us, we tried it. We tested with 20,000 plus CVs, and it didn't work out. There are a lot of glitches still. Maybe it's a language thing. Maybe in English it works fine. In other local languages, maybe it's because usually AI is about a thing that it needs to learn from some data and then it can replicate it to the future. But when you have weak data, AI cannot learn that. Yeah. So, for example, CV parsing, it didn't work. Of course, you know that there are a lot of tools, and they kind of try to evaluate candidates. Yeah, but I think it's really, really difficult to, for example, Amazon.com, they have the whole process kind of like automated. You apply and everything is automated. Yeah? You actually get fired automated by a robot without actually seeing anyone, right? But this psychology evaluation, yeah, evaluation based on the video from the video interviewing software and so on, I think it's definitely going. I think definitely the evolution, the curve of the evolution, it's really exponential, and for the past 2-3 years, it's really better. Even for, I can mention like two startups, both are actually Czech startups, for example, communication like this. I think in one of those articles, it was also like about like hiring people abroad, remote communication, and so on. One tool, it's called around.co, like around.co, and it's more like simulating. It's like this. It's like a video conference tool, but it's more sophisticated, including things like there is no echo and so on. There is AI that it's taking just your face, so regardless what your background is, how you move, it's still getting your face, but it's on top of your apps. So you can be working in Google Chrome or maybe in some spreadsheets, and you will see, that's why it's called round. You will see just, for example, 3 rounds, and those will be your colleagues. So it's like simulating that you are sitting next to each other in the office.
They float over your apps.
Kind of, yeah.
Oh, it's class.
Yeah. It's not, you can get to the waiting list. It's not like ready yet. But
and again, like, you give me a huge long list there. I'm going to pause you. And Isabel Lumberg is asking, can you share your checklist with us? If we don't have it already, we'll absolutely get that as a blog, Isabel. There's tons of advice. You're probably scribbling away trying to get it all down. Promise we'll put it out as a blog. And if you're a social talent user, Jose's new courses are some have gone live, more go live in the next few weeks as well with all of those tips. Chris Jennings just had a couple of comments I wanted just to call out for you, Jose. One, I think he's agreeing with you here. Why wouldn't LinkedIn be the next place to visit after your own database? Sourcing is about going to the obvious place first, then going from there. But an interesting follow-up point he made is that for diverse hiring, maybe you should be looking outside your normal go-to places to reach diverse talent pools. Is this something that you've seen with your teams, that you have requests to say, find more diverse talent, whatever diverse looks like, or the need is? And when you're approaching looking for diverse talent who you don't really expect to necessarily be on the same platforms, or maybe they are, maybe that's a misnomer. Maybe diverse talent is on the same platforms, but it's harder to find. What has been your experience in terms of sourcing for diverse talent?
To be honest, imagine the Czech Republic before COVID, 1.9% unemployment rate. We were actually struggling to find anybody on the market. So we were not doing diverse at all, if I say this way. Yeah? Imagine that was the second lowest unemployment rate in the world. Yeah? Mm-hmm. But of course, I think it also quite differs country to country, because somewhere the problem might be some of our clients, for example, they aim for like gender diversity. Yeah, that's probably like the main diversity. Diversity like age and so on. So definitely, I wouldn't say that it's like primarily a question of the platform. Of course, when we say like on TikTok there are teenagers, we don't use it for sourcing yet, like just a quote. But we cannot say like going to Facebook we will find a different people than we can find on LinkedIn. Of course, the group is slightly different, but practically for our roles, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So when we need to look, look more and search more for women, it really is not like platform dependent. You just need to know how to search for women on LinkedIn, which is not like there's no button men women. So you need to, for example, work with names, something like that. That's probably the only way how you can do that.
It did come up. It was one of the articles earlier. I forgot to mention it. There was a point around diversity and a piece of advice in the article which I thought resonated with me, because I've seen it and from so many other teams, that when you talk about a more inclusive approach to sourcing and doing more diverse sourcing, is start with the diversity of your team, and it can be much easier if you've got a diverse source team. So let's say if the diversity of the team represents the diversity you want to see in the business, they will more likely, not guaranteed, but more likely just know how to not only find more diverse talent in more perhaps either the same places or different places, but also how to approach them. Because if you start with diversity in your own team, your recruiting or sourcing team, that extends to the ability to source diversity. Whereas if you have a homogenous sourcing team and you ask them to be more diverse in their sourcing, it can be a real challenge because they're homogenous. They have the same experience, the same backgrounds, and will look in the same places. Sometimes you solve the diversity sourcing challenge by making your team more diverse in the first place, and then saying, go find people, and they will just do it differently. Question here, by the way, we question coming from YouTube. How much recruitment do you think is taking place on job boards, job portals like Monster or Naukri in India versus LinkedIn? What's your take on the spread? You advocated certainly for LinkedIn as being a great source. How does that compare, do you think, to the traditional job boards, maybe the CV and resume databases in particular of those job boards?
Of course, it's a question how to calculate it. It's also about the unemployment rate. Yeah? For us, for example, the job portals, it didn't work at all, because for the roles you were hiring, we didn't have, let's say, any CVs. Now, of course, times are maybe different, at least for a temporary period of time. And I know that, for example, some accounting companies now were actually reporting to me that they are able to hire, for example, auditors from Big Four of companies like KPMG, Deloitte, and so on, from job advertising, which was totally unbelievable before COVID. Now it's possible. Yeah, so definitely, probably now it's not our strategy. For example, when we tested, because LinkedIn, they also had like the platform for jobs, right? We tested a couple of times, didn't work. Yeah, so that's also like the purpose of what we do, because we don't want you as a company, I mean like in-house company, can put their advertisement. We don't need to duplicate their work. So we are using alternative channels and our spiel, which is the active sourcing, right? So 90% of what we do is active sourcing plus different kind of campaigns and so on, but it's not job portals. But definitely, I would recommend everybody or any company just to try it. Try to put it there, and you will see what actually the output is: volume, quality, and of course, for example, on LinkedIn, you will get, for example, a lot of people from abroad. You are sometimes maybe not even able to hire. It's not your desired workforce, but LinkedIn is done in a way that anybody can apply to any job. So I would definitely try it.
I'm going to throw in some comments, particularly around the Naukri comment. In India, Naukri, people are addicted to searching on Naukri and using that in the CV database. Indeed have actually a pretty powerful platform in India that's free to search. And I did several tests with groups and found that Indeed was as powerful, if not more powerful, as a CV database with unique talent. And again, you just change up the keywords to your point around search for different things in the same place and you'll find different results. And we had good success. Or look at the 2-year-old resumes and then predict what they might be doing now. And I found that to be super helpful. But I think the comments you made at the very start of the show is really, really poignant here, Jose, which is don't just run an ad and attract somebody. Think of something else. And to your point, you tried it with Microsoft, which is you advertised training courses, which attracted the right type of person. And then they enrolled and that gave you a talent pool. It's just thinking about data different. You need to connect with the person. You don't need a CV or a resume necessarily. It doesn't need to be a job ad, but how do you basically flush out the talent and then engage with them? I think that's a that really interests me. Do you think that's going to be something that you as a business will double down on and do more of? And do you think therefore would you recommend it to others?
It's a question. It's of course if there is a demand for that. I think we are one of the recruitment firms here in Southern Eastern Europe having actually an internal marketing agency. Yeah, so we started like internal market, which wasn't that obvious for recruitment companies before. But just briefly to answer even the previous question about the portals, we use job advertising portals, the databases. We use those databases, and I think the previous questions where to go first, like LinkedIn database and so on. I would practically say that our people in general they go into our ATS, then they go to the databases, sometimes commercial of these job.cz in the Czech Republic, Monster, and so on, because there might be some active candidates, of course, quickly to be handed over. And then we go to LinkedIn and then anywhere else. If I would make it generic, like what's the structure behind it?
Well, that is a great tip, and I can't believe we got here already. We're nearly at time for the show, Jose. It's been just literally littered with great advice and tips and great questions from the audience. And I thank them for that. Before we go, though, I was wondering if you might be able to share with our audience a piece of advice, the kind of piece of advice you'd like to share from your experience, or maybe it's a piece of advice that's been given to you in your career that you think would resonate with our predominantly sourcing audience here today.
Yeah, I would maybe go back with the don't be romantic about how you hire your employees. Yeah. Sometimes like a complex search query is not the best search query. Usually the more simpler search query is the best. Yeah. Instead of putting their product manager or product owner and so on, just put their product or product and you covered it all. Yeah. So that's one thing. Maybe for example, putting just some local ad on a local grocery store, a local shop, maybe in some small town somewhere might be the best. It doesn't look cool, but it's working. So when it's working, it's working. So don't be romantic about how you actually hire your employees. LinkedIn is maybe boring, but if it's working, it's working.
I love that. Don't be romantic. You need to just focus on what works. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for those tips and insights, Jose. Great having you on the show, and I'm even prouder to have you on the Social Talent platform, as will our users as they get to your content. Loads of new tips for a post-pandemic world, what's really working for sourcers on the ground, doing high-volume sourcing. Jose, great to have you. We'll have you on the show again next year, I hope, and I wish you a good evening. I know you've got more podcasts to record because you never stop. So thanks for joining us here in the Shortlist this week.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Johnny. Thanks for the opportunity, and good luck to everyone.
We'll be back next week, as always, with another show. But if you're listening to this as a podcast, please do subscribe on Spotify or Apple and give us an L 5-star review. If you've enjoyed this show, I really hope you will just take the extra time to give us a 5-star review, and that will help spread the word to other people like you who could benefit from the show's advice and from the fantastic guests we have. Don't forget, you can find out more about the show at socialtalent.com/the shortlist and access any of those shows. Or if you want to get the video experience and actually watch one of the shows, if you haven't been listening, or if you've been listening on podcasts and want to get the video experience, do go there. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. Until then, take care.